So today we're talking about network topography. Last week we talked about overall social network analysis as judgment. Today we're going to be talking about topography. I've already described one topography metric, and that is density, whether a network is well connected or not. Okay, that's density. And we actually have a specific measure for it. There are many potential metrics out. Another thing that we'll have a lecture on would be cohesive subgroup within a network. Those are cells, for example, within a terrorist organization, or a clique within a gang. There might be an overall gang, but there might be a small cell within it. And then brokers and the essential actors, and then brokers and leads. So what is network topography? It is a focus on the overall structure of a network. So why should we look at network topography? It indicates trade-offs, such as resilience versus effectiveness. It's important to run prior to centrality. So let's say I told you, here's a list of the most central actors in network. You might say, okay, well, I'm just going to go and arrest or kill the most central actors in this terrorist network. Well, what if I told you that this was a decentralized network and everybody was connected to everyone? What good would it do to remove the top two most connected individuals? That will really not. So we want to run network topography and understand the overall structure of the network before we jump to, hey, this is a central actor. We want to remove them from it. Because we think that will disrupt. Yeah. And it gives us a unique view into a network and its overall structure. Okay, so here, we're looking at this. Yeah. So, looking at this network, what do you notice about it? Who's the most important person in this network? Very good. Would you say this is a centralized network or a decentralized network? Yeah, this is how it's highest prototypical centralized network. Everything is routed through one person. Highly centralized. This is a completely disconnected network. Is this a centralized or decentralized network? Decentralized. Everybody is connected to everybody. In this case, the removal of 4 would have no effect. In the prior case, the removal of 4 leaves the network completely destroyed. Here, everybody can still talk. So this is another network. Doesn't really matter what it is, but this gives you a sense of how complex networks you can get, and this is not a fraction statement essentially again. We can see that there are clusters within this. We can also see, for example, here, can you see my mouse moving? We can also see here, for example, this person is a broker. If you were to cut them off from the network, you would be able to get over here. This is a network made out of YouTube channels. And here what we can see is we've got a layout that is showing when there are tightly connected actors that are heavily connected to each other. They become highly centralized. We also see that this is probably this could be something like a leave on who layout that's pushing disconnected actors further out from the outside. So here are some network topography measurements. First, overall network size. How many people are in this network? How many YouTube channels are in there? We call this N size. That would be one of the first things I would want to know about a network. Next, network density. That is a fraction of the number of existing ties over the number of possible ties. Thus, this will always be on a 0 to 1 scale. And it does not take into account strength of tie. So for example, let's say me and Alton talk to each other 100 times, and everybody else in this class I talk to once or a million times. Theoretically, if density took into account that I talked to him 100 times or 1,000 times, you might have something more than one. Right? You might have greater preference. Density will automatically turn us talking 1,000 times into us talking just once. That's how that works. The density will never go over 1. 1 is the max, 0 is the min. The problem with density is, and I think I've mentioned this to you guys before, but it bears repeating. The problem with density is, particularly when it comes to human networks, the number of possible ties goes up exponentially. So it's a square, right? So if there's 10 people in a network, you do 10 squared minus 10. The people can't be connected to themselves. They're getting Christians. Doing dialogues with the parent dollars down getting the center of cell. Sometimes cell ties are useful, like if there's internal fighting within a group or something like that, but most of the time the math is getting rid of cell ties. So if I have network 10, what is the total possible ties you have? 9? No, 10 people on the network. Which is 7 minus 10? 9. Exactly. Okay, you calculated it exactly. 10 times 10 minus 10, you can't be connected to yourself. That's the denominator, always, for the number of possible ties. And then the number of existing ties is the top of that fraction, the numerator. Okay, here's the problem. So, 10 people, 10 possible ties. Okay, this could potentially be very well. Now, let's pretend the number is 100. So now we go 100 times 100. What does that work out to? 10,000. Am I doing that right? No. Is it 1,000? Wait, 4 should be 10,000. 10,000. Okay. 10,000 minus 100. So we would get 9,900. Yeah, 9,900. Yeah, 9,900. You see how exponentially the number of potential ties go up? How many people can you actually talk to? Let's say we can only have 10 to 20 real relationships as human beings. Let's say that's the case. What automatically happens to density once the size of the network is? Maybe not less than next person, for example, yeah, and you can be acquaintance ties, but the reality is we're saying that the number of potential ties we have is fixed, and the size of the network is potentially expanding at an exponential rate. What's going to happen to density? Yeah, go ahead. It's going to go down. Density has to go down. So you want to be very careful comparing the networks of different sizes. There is a metric that takes care of this problem for us, and that's called average G-root. It counts out the number of ties that every single person in the network has, and then divides by the total number of ties. So you get a number like the average tree of this network is here. The average tree is 3. And that allows us to compare across networks of different sizes. So just bear that in mind. Density is one of the first things we go to, but average degree is better for comparing networks of different sizes. Yeah, sorry, just a minute. Average degree that counts on the number of times. Divides on. Uh, so it's divide by the number. Um, what's going to be exact? It's look at the jobs. See. No. It's having something too. How many density? No, average degree is average for pi divided by the number of people in the So am I doing that right? Am I? No, it's not a fraction. It's just boundary line of ChatGPT. This is what happens when the professors. Yeah, we're smooth doing court. Oh, really? Yeah. And divide by the total number of nodes. I had it right. Yeah, it's right. Yeah. So it's the total number of ties divided by the total number of nodes. It's the distinction between A and density. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'm going to go through the ones that I think are the most interesting and get kind of big ideas. Okay. Fragmentation. How fragmented this network? So I'm not going to go through how to operate that. Remember, a lot of these calculations are done for you. Software. I'm going to walk you through how to do that as well. Reachability, how easy it is to reach across this network. Point connectivity, nobody does that. How does path distance? This one is really easy. How easy is it? How far away each actor is from each other in the network? How many steps do you have to go through the network? And that's really helps us get an idea of connectivity and how well resources flow through this network. Now, we're security studies class, so I'm going to be telling you about criminals and terrorists. But this is absolutely used in epidemiology to study the spread of diseases. This is absolutely used to study threat networks, like law enforcement networks. I've done that myself. Uh, I had like a total nerd moment this weekend because as a security studies professor, I'm actually more interested in when people in government are using my work. And so somebody who was very high ranking from a major agency was like, "Hey, you said something about podcasts. What's that based on? Is there a study?" I was like, "I got a study for you." And it was something I wrote. I was like, "Yes, it's showing your agencies are essential to help." And the guy got really excited. I was like, "Yeah, your agencies are really cool in terms of connectivity." Oh, that's like my total word. So how this is about how many steps to get across from one node to another. If this was a drug network and you needed access to chemical shooters or a drug supplier, knowing how many steps you have to go through would be valuable. If you were law enforcement trying to disrupt this network, knowing how many steps they have to go through is also, or where to insert informants, for example, so that your informant can go and do a lot of illegal drug buys while wearing wire and then wrap up the network very fast. I want to get at this idea of reciprocity. This is typically for directed data. So, he is a student in this class. I tell him what to do. He doesn't tell me what to do. But so that's a directed relationship. But even when there are directed relationships, like there's a phone call, I call him, he picks up. That's him receiving a phone call, call him back. So how reciprocal ties are in directed data, that's a reciprocity is in there. Transitivity, or sometimes it is called like triadic closure and things like that. If I know Austin and he knows Alton, what is likely to happen? Over. Triangle here. The triangle will close eventually. So we can predict, we might run link prediction algorithms, for example, to say, what are the new ties that are likely to form? That gets us at some as it is based on assumption. It might not be true. It is based on assumption. We need to know what our assumptions are and express in a statement. Using an algorithm like that, we're starting to assume things like triadic. Eventually, through proximity to Austin, I will get also need something else. Uh, clustering coefficient, how much does it cluster? I'm going to skip EI index. Network diameter. How far to get from one end of the network all the way across to the other end? How many steps do I take? That's network diameter. Is a good overall network topography metric. A large diameter suggests a network that is what? A large diameter? Yeah. What? Disconnected. Yeah, no, that's good. The idea is if you have a large diameter, you have to go through lots of steps to get all the way to the network. Now, you can have tons of people in the network, but they're all connected to one person, and all you have to think is that one person. And you get to the other end of the network. So what would the diameter of that network be? Really small? Tell me what the number is. This whole class, theoretically, we could be lined up like a chain. And there'd be what? There's what, 20 people in the class? 26, something like that? 20. 21. So you'd have like 20 steps to get across there. But we all know, and Lizzie, sorry, Lizzie. We all know Lizzie. So we're all connected to Lizzie. What's the diameter of the town? What? No, two. We're close. One would be close, right? Because if I know Lizzie, also know Lizzie, for me to get to him, one step, two steps, that's diameters. You don't get quite two diameter of one unless everybody's connected, everybody. And it's just one step. Okay, so that's diameter. Centralization is a little complicated. And unfortunately, Gephi does not complicate. It is the bane of my existence that Gephi does not complicate. There are other software packages that complicate this. Quite understand, like UCI. So, and unfortunately, UCI, which was developed at the University of Rhode Island, University of California, Irvine, UCI only works on PC. And it's a mess. Not to get it onto a Mac. So I just can't assign it. You guys know what a desmadre is? Anybody know what a desmadre is? What? Go ahead. If you say it, I don't get in trouble. Yeah. All that though. So in Mexican Spanish, so by the way, you're gonna notice Mexican. In Mexican probably how much so desmadre is like means it's all, you know, or you can say and then it's the la madre, I kind of know to the mother, like sick of it, like it's the la madre. So there's two ways to everything. It's my mother. You just get violent, like it's cool. Like so the father is the cool. Like oh, it's like what a father, you know, like that's it. But everything is like awesome on that. Mexican Spanish is like what is class? I love how I can British well everyone speaks Spanish. It's I'm allowed to curse in Spanish. I agree. It's see, I love it. Um, okay, so all right, we covered centralization. Well, we didn't cover centralization. Centralization is a measure of variance in individual centrality scores. What the F does that mean? Okay, going back to that network where you had 5 people and there was one in the center, everybody was connected out. That person has an incredibly high centralization, so it has an incredibly high individual centrality score. Everybody else is a very low individual centrality. That's the maximum centralization. If everybody was connected to everybody, everybody's centrality score would be exactly the same. Centralization would be 0. A situation where everything is centered around one person, the centralization score starts to approach the 0 to 1 scale. Now, when you calculate this out, every centrality metric there is degree centrality, so you got a degree centralization score. But for degree centrality, every single node in the network gets an individual score. A degree centralization score will only the overall network gets a score. And it gets one number. The beauty of network topography is when looking at the overall network, you get one number for each of these metrics. Yeah.
Did you say the word for definition for centralization was? Because you kind of lost me on that one.
And I'm probably butchering this a little bit, but it is the variance, is a measure of the variance of individual centrality scores. So it's an overall measure that is looking at and measuring the variance of centrality. Within it, it's generating one number. So it's a network topography measure. The beauty of network topography metrics is they are basically one score overall. Variance, and by variance I mean how much does it change? Are you centralized around one person and you have a ton of disconnected? Most networks are going to be in between. There's going to be some level of centralization. Okay. We're not going to go through all of these, but these are the big ones. Yeah. I like this one. Ah. All right. On the left, is it my left? You have the Forrest Gump. And on the right, you have the Pulp Fiction. Yeah, right. Just gotta make sure I'm looking at this. There. So let's look at this. Has everybody seen the movie Forrest Gump? Has everybody seen the movie Pulp Fiction? No? Pulp Fiction is a really good movie, but like, it to the class, like the whole, yeah, there's the scenes that are pretty, yeah, it's Quentin Tarantino, yeah, it's got some heavy scenes, but it's a really good example of film with lots of different, right? Like you're gonna watch a great movie and it's got 2 or 3 actors, like yeah, it can be a great film, but this is one of those kind of like a little bit more epic. There's lots of different storylines all coming together. Anyways, Forrest Gump is like that too, but it all centers around Forrest Gump. Whereas Pulp Fiction is going where you've got a scene with these characters and you've got a scene with these characters, and eventually they may come together on either side. But it's a fundamentally different way to tell a story. Whereas Forrest Gump is just like one chronological narrative going through Forrest Gump style. Okay. So is one network larger than the other? Overall, just looking at it, which one has more people? Forrest Gump network. Okay. So that's the n size. Forrest Gump network is large. So size 94. 94 characters appear in Forrest Gump. 38 appear in Pulp Fiction. The average degree in the Forrest Gump network is 5.76. The average path length is 1.995. But if we look at the Pulp Fiction network, we've got an average degree of 5.36 and an average path length of 2.326. So what does that mean? Which network is easier to get across? The Forrest Gump network. And yet, there's a ton more people in the Forrest Gump network. How do you explain that? In terms of network structure. Why? Who are they connected to? Forrest Gump. Jen, yeah. Once you get to Forrest Gump, because it is a more centralized network, you can get across the town. Easily. Everybody knows Forrest is that. In the Pulp Fiction network, you have a small number of people, only 38. And there is no one centralized actor that everybody is connected to. And yet their average degrees are roughly the same. But the Forrest Gump network is 3 times larger. All right, go ahead and read those. This is where you get to figure out how well I did actually define these things. Guy's a young teenager, and so this guy is kind of schooling him by the campfire on how to run terrorists. He holds up a bunch of bricks, a literal bunch. He says, Al Qaeda is like this bunch of bricks. The individual cells are well connected bricks inside. But there is only one branch back to the main model. That is how they are balancing the problem of security versus efficiency. Any network that is well connected tends to be more functional in what they're trying to do. You were in the military, what would happen if your comms went down? You would have one is making the like you just obviously you just put there. Yeah. But would you be more efficient if your comms stopped? No, for sure. Yeah. You were great, so and you do nothing half the time. Yeah, that's a good example. Anyway, that the Marines are famous for like we make you. Yeah, we get army leftovers. Oh, it's don't work. Explosives. Like that's the we will find a way to take over so often. With limited resources. We will figure it out. That's the actually for Latin America. There's a famous line from Marie. He says, he's like, you think Al Capone was a gangster? Just when I did Nicaragua. Like, what we did, we were taking over countries, overthrowing the Sandinistas. We were saying General Sandino, that was, General Sandino was a rebel against the United States in Nicaragua in the 1930s. The Sandinistas that came up in the 1970s named themselves after him. The Marines put him down in the 1930s. Comms are really important. And all channel network does a really good job of whatever it's trying to do. Good communications are helpful. Let me give you an example. There's a very famous example called Van Gulch disaster. So in the 1940s, there's this big fire in Montana. And they drop in smoke jumpers. This one particular smoke jumper unit got a new leader assigned to them that day. Somebody they did not know. And they get dropped in behind the fire lines. Now, do you guys everybody knows? Yeah, they're like the fighter pilots of firefighters, right? They get dropped in, parachuted in, and then they have to like take trenches and stop this fire, try to contain this fire. Basically nothing but shovels. And some really limited firefighting. They don't have access to water. They're going to use water like to keep what's there. That kind of stuff. Pretty good fire lines limit and contain damage. So the Van Gulch disaster, they get dropped in, And there's a little problem. They didn't have radios back then that fit on your shoulder, attached like modern ones. Radio equipment was bigger back then. It was the 1940s. So the radio equipment would get parachuted in with them, and they would kind of set up their radio system from there on the fly. The problem was the radio equipment got dropped with its own parachute, and that shit didn't open, basically exploded. So these guys get dropped into a very smoky environment. They barely know where they are. They have new leadership that they don't necessarily know or trust, and they're scattered all over the place. And there's a big fire coming in on. This is not going well. And the new leader basically does something that is kind of unprecedented. He makes sense of what's going on around him, called sense making. Carl Lyman, very famous article on language disaster, which is what I'm telling you. It's all based on. It's all based on the journal. He makes sense of what's going on, and he puts men to do something crazy. In an instant, it's like an infinity war. He says, throw down all of your equipment and set a fire up here. They look at him like he's crazy. Some of them back away from him, like, this guy's crazy. We're trying to fight fires. And he wants us to stop being firefighters, strong them down, and set a fire right here. Some of them listen to him, and they step up. And the people who didn't listen to him died. Jim. So here's what he was doing. He realized that fire was coming in on them no matter what. Figured it out. They were going to die. There was only one way to live. And the way to live was to set a small fire now and burn out the fuel that was around them. Now we call this an escape fire. It's considered a standard operating procedure for lots of firefighters. Create an escape fire. You burn out the fuel that surrounds you immediately while it's a small fire. And then when it's burned out, you move into that area. That when the big fire comes in on you, you've got a safe area where there's no fuel for the fire. You might burn it. He invents that on the fly. No one had done it before. For some potential historical examples, I was taking a tour in London last fall, and they talked about that there might have been a priest who set some buildings on fire because no bigger fire was coming, kind of a thing. Or somebody did that, someone in London or something. There were some stories in the 1800s about Americans on the prairie realizing this big prairie fire was coming on them. They burned out the areas around them. So that when a big fire came in, there would be no fuel. So they had a small contained fire that they could deal with. There's some examples of that. There were no historical records that suggest this guy had heard of it or knew about that or had been trained on. He made it up on the fly. And now it's considered standard operating. So when we're going back and looking at why all those people died in the Angeles disaster, why some of them survived, one of the key problems was there was a lack of leadership trust because they never worked with this guy before. And second, their communications and comm systems were completely eliminated, limiting their ability to coordinate with each other over time and distance. So a lot of people died and were physically separated out, and their radio systems weren't working because there was not the base radio system had shut down. All of this is to illustrate how important connectivity is and how important networking is. And that generally we can assume that a better networked adversary may be more efficient. However, when we're dealing with criminals and terrorists, they trade security and efficiency for security. And they probably do this at different rates. Marcelli, very famous SNA scholar who unfortunately passed. Colin Marcelli has an article, social networks called security versus efficiency. Basically, he argues terrorists will trade security for efficiency. Drug cartels and drug dealers and organized crime are going to trade They're going to engage in some security, but they're going to trade profits and efficiency for security. I.e., they're both interested in security, but drug dealers got to do their business. Organized crime got to make their money. Terrorists are willing to buy their time until the last moment to pull off a terrorist attack, so that they don't fall victim to the state, basically, and law enforcement. So, the example of Al Qaeda and a bunch of prayers. Globally, this overall network is not well connected, but locally, within the cells, it is very deep. Average degree isn't going to give you very much on that phenomenon. Okay. Now, looking at these networks, here are some sample networks. We have a size of 100 nodes and a size of 500 nodes. We have edges, the number of ties. There's 244 in one, 6,244 in the other. And look, their density scores are almost exactly the same. No, they are exactly the same. This is the phenomenon. Bigger the network, expect density to go down. Which network you actually think, if you're just looking at it, would you say is more dense? The red one or the blue? Absolutely. There's a lot of size in there. But because there are so many actors in there, the density score remains relatively low at 0.05. Notice though the average degree score. 4.88 in the blue network, but it's 24.5 in the red network. Which one is giving you a more accurate sense of the interconnectivity of these two networks relative to each other? What's that?
Are you saying which one?
Which you need? Density or average degree? It's getting more accurate sense of how connected these are. This is the problem with comparing density scores across networks of widely divergent sizes. Here's another one. We've got 100 nodes versus 500 nodes, 244 edges versus 1257. Got a density score of 0.05 in the blue network, 0.01 in the green network. Average degree is 4.88, 5.03 in the green network. They're roughly the same across average degree. Density, they look a lot different. Okay, now let's apply this to the Forrest Gump and the Pulp Fiction networks. So in the Forrest Gump network, we've got an average degree of 5.76, and the average degree is 5.368 in the Pulp Fiction network. So pretty similar here. How often friends of friends are connected to each other? Okay, so here we got the highly centralized network, and here we got a decentralized network. So we would call this clustered versus not clustered. Clustering tends to be how much they're clustered around either one individual or a small group. Clustering coefficient measures how clustered a network is. We'll talk more about this in brokers and bridges. Okay. So average clustering coefficient, 0.896. Average clustering coefficient in the Pulp Fiction network, 8.20. So why do we think that the clustering coefficient is stronger in the Forrest Gump network versus the Pulp Fiction network?
Because there's a main character.
Exactly, there's the main character. Forrest and Jenny, the whole cast seems to be revolving around. Okay, distance. Average length of all the shortest paths. There's this fancy word called geodesic. This is shortest path between two actors. Go ahead and read that. Okay. Notice we've got a network that has more people in it, and yet it's easier to get across. Which is it? What? Well, no. Opposite. Forrest Gump. More people than Forrest Gump. And yet the average path length is shorter. And this comes back to that idea of why everybody's in a scene with Forrest. So once you get to Forrest, you get to anybody else in the network. And those people are automatically connected to Forrest Gump. Whereas in Pulp Fiction, it's a little more diffuse. All right. Here's your formal definition of centralization. They're getting a lot of calls with hospitalizations. Oh, I'm the stream relying. She's it's like shut up. They get the first words out of his mouth. I am never. I'm playing it safe. You still get it. It's like what's that? Me and one person that flu. Yeah. The flu the vaccine. It was the 5G interaction with the vaccine and the chip in the vaccine. Yeah, and cell towers. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Some shit. Church now. Teaching classes online during the pandemic. You know, I students that were just spouting pure conspiracy theory. I mean, it was wild. Like, every one of your citations has the word Sputnik in it, bro. Like, this is like the most obvious Russian propaganda I've ever seen. Okay, now I want you to see there's degree centralization. Degree is the raw number of connections a person has. That's how we calculate that. So we get a degree centralization by looking at the variance in the overall network. Then there's betweenness centrality. So we can do betweenness centrality, i.e., how in between other actors in the network are you? So we look at all the paths and we count up, hey, all the paths across everybody in the network kind of go through this one guy. This guy has a really high betweenness centralization score, betweenness centrality score. Well, we can get a betweenness centrality score for everybody in the network, and then we get a betweenness centralization. So again, Forrest Gump, high betweenness centralization. In fact, well, he's super high on degree centrality. He's extremely high on betweenness centrality. All right. When you have a decentralized network, degree centrality is 0.07. How useful is it to identify the top 3 individuals in terms of degree centrality? Is it useful or not? Less useful. Not so much. Yes, it could depend, but not so much. Because if it's a decentralized network and you remove the top 3 most central actors, well, no, it's still decentralized. So it won't affect it that much. But if it's a very highly centralized network and you remove the actors, you might have to make a significant dent in the overall centralization. Yeah.
For decentralized networks, since we're moving like the top 3 is the most central actor doesn't do very much. What would you do instead to heavily affect that network related not functioning?
That's a great question. Depends on the network, and it depends on, like, say what you're doing with the network. Let's say you have a highly decentralized network that's trying to overthrow your authoritarian government, and everybody's talking to everybody. What can you do if you're an authoritarian government to disconnect in one fell swoop? There you go, shut down the internet. Authoritarian regimes do it all the time. You can create a digital Chinese wall between your internet and the rest of the world's internet. Outlaw certain websites, outlaw certain communications with money or what? No, I heard chase domestic terrorism was quotations, please don't go down the list. You have no idea. It is really funny. You have no idea how. Like, this is a running joke in all my classes. I had a student one time, it was in my class, and she had climate security going to show a giant hurricane destroying the center of the country. She had another book called Leaderless Jihad, and she had Citizen Protectors, which has like guns. There's like a book on gun culture in the United States. They had like guns all over. And she was going through the airport, and then she had something grabbing his little gun. But happens all the time. Everybody's like, I'm gonna end up on the list. The worst is when I was like a million, just finished my PhD, I was at the University of San Diego, and an older professor was like, they invited me out. So I was like, oh, this is so cool. But it always was slightly awkward because they didn't just say, hey, we're meeting up with beers on Thursday. They were like, hey, we're having a weekly Al Qaeda meeting on Thursday at such and such place. It's like hilarious, also like, it's a joke. Yeah, it's a joke. Surveillance. We all got used to it, or just came to accept it and assume that it's happening, which is a dystopian future. So, because what is surveillance and the assumption of surveillance due to what you do if you know your constant surveillance? Well, yeah, if you're self-censored. Yeah, you're self-censored. Are you guys familiar with like code, discipline, and punish, the concept of panopticon? Okay, so panopticon is like, let's say you got a prison, and it's like one wall of cells. Wall. Put it like in a curve, like a circle, inside of a circle. You have like and you put one watch point in the middle. It could, in theory, one guard tower could be looking into every single cell at all times. There's only one guard looking at all the cells at once. No. But if you want to avoid getting into disciplinary infraction in this prison, what should you do? Assume he's looking at. So for very little, states can establish massive surveillance with very little cost. So for example, Chinese police officers started wearing smart glasses. And they put out a bunch of media that the smart glasses are looking at and facial recognition. So I can see Joe's face and know everything about him, which shows his criminal records. Okay. But the stuff isn't that interesting stuff. But the Chinese officers were like, would walk up to us and start confessing crimes, assuming we already knew. They're like, it's awesome. They're like, it's it was someone who confessed, and they assumed we already knew. In Russia, when they wanted to control the population, totalitarian Soviet Union, how did they do it? They had KGB agents there. You didn't know who the talks. You see very right institution. It's very costly to hire all these KGB agents to have them on there. It's very expensive. Mao Zedong came up with a different culture. He said, I know some of you having these evil capitalist bourgeois thoughts. If you come forward, we'll give you a light out. And you'll just go to that little renovation camp for a short amount of time. If you don't, and we find out about it, go away for a long time. What do you think everybody China did? They didn't go away. They turned themselves in. They didn't want to risk it. So governments with all kinds of clever, many of them not legal, not good. This is not an endorsement. Giving you examples from world history, game theory, things like that, of how you might sever connections, decentralize, or shut down centralized or decentralized networks, how you might deal with those things. Uh, okay, so network topography analyzes the overall shape of the network. It relates to network effectiveness, whether or not a network is provincial versus cosmopolitan. So what do we mean? Provincial, think the provinces, often the hinterlands, areas, not well connected to the overall network. Think of cosmopolitan. So what do you mean they're cosmopolitan? No. Cosmopolitan. Swings and buildings, travel along through all kinds of lots of places. Cosmopolitan network is thinking it's well connected overall. Provincial network might be locally connected but not well connected overall. Hierarchical would be how like high levels of centralization, hierarchy. Um, so imagine the U.S. military; it's a very hierarchical organization in terms of all those rank structures. Not that they don't short circuit that in lots of different ways. Hierarchical, we could call that like flatness, to measure how decentralized. Does anybody know some of the ways that the U.S. military short circuit hierarchy to make it more efficient? Very high. This is a whole old pattern. I'm giving you the example of the soldier in Afghanistan wants to put fire on target. He doesn't have to go up the whole chain of command. There are rules of engagement, standard operating procedures. They network themselves. So those are some other really interesting things. One military person is class. So I'm going to be running. Sorry, I'll take. Okay. Storytelling. Yeah. Did they walk in with a rank openly displayed? Usually, it's where they have like soul things they have some noodles and social drugs. So yeah, it's from the store, like all these computers and stuff like that. Yeah, you never know what they were. You would never know what rank they were. Either the military. Say it was one class of people. We don't know what they're rank. Yeah, it's weird. Because when many people would think they're lower, and they still see this too, or that's the hypothesis. Yeah,
If you don't know what rank they are, you can assume they're a higher rank and they can make a decision when no one else can.
yeah. That ambiguity allows them which makes it operate. It can walk up to a general, and the general doesn't actually know whether or not they operate. Not with any certainty. Now, most generals are going to be older guys. You know, MI guys are going to be like younger than the age at best. You're ready to be military part of the ship. It's out there. But that would be pretty rare. But the idea would be like, hey, these guys might have a weird operation that might be really important and has to be compartmentalized, and they need your immediate compliance. And they're going to work on this small operation that could turn the tide on the wheel. It's one little thing. And they need that space to maneuver. So even hierarchical networks have ways of short-circuiting the hierarchy for efficiency. We're almost done here. The Zgoda network was a resistance to the Nazis in Poland. There are a ton of networks, but I like to think of them as the good guys. Uh, Anytime you kill Nazis, I think it's good, you know. The Zgoda network consists of three time periods. Pre-Zgoda, before 1941, the formation of Zgoda at Rome, 1941 to 43, French phase, 43 to 45. Network topography measures can be used to see how the overall structure of the network changes over time. As an example, we analyze the network organizations as unweighted networks. What does that mean, unweighted? What's that? Kind of, yeah. What do you mean by that? Everyone was Okay. Entire. You're getting at it. I like the way you're thinking. Okay. Um, one tie between me and Alton, or 100 ties between me and Alton. Unweighted means it's one. We're ignoring weighted ties. Uh, that's what it means. Okay, so what they're doing is with Zagoda, we've got 40 nodes, 71 edges or ties, density of 0.091, average degree 3.55, network diameter is 4, distance 1.93. Number of components, what do you think that means? Number of components, 12. Look at the sociogram, visualization, sociogram. 12, how would you get to 12? Let's look at it. I already know this. She's doing it. Yeah, she's figuring it out. Well, no, it's the number of disconnected pieces in the house. What? Yes, okay. So we got isolates out here. We just called them outliers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Those are components. And an isolate is someone who has no ties. Should tell you a quick story. My wife gets real estate agreements, like, and I take her to the OB9, and this idiot OB9, going to the first, says it on the phone. She's not reading well. And I always had this thing in my mind, like, you're registered, yeah, registered your agreement. It's like, but I would say, whenever she's complaining about stuff, I would say, stop. Since you go to the hospital alone, because if it is, we're going to get done. And if it was a small issue, good. Like, no, it's small, man. But this, I know what you're saying. Go to a doctor. I was like, okay, let's go see the other guy. Idiot sends her home. Next morning, she wakes up, and I'm like, she's in pain. I'm like, is this to go to the hospital? And she goes, yes. I was like, all right, let's go. Those idiots can't figure out this one. They're like, 4 days, my wife is screaming at me, I'm facing life outside. Finally, a new doctor comes in who has got a brain, and he's like, is she still in there? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, all right, that's it. I'm doing it now. I was like, so we walk in, and he checks her right in front of me, does this, hand check. He looks at me, he goes, baby's coming now. I shit you not. I tried to negotiate with him. I said, this baby's only been in there 6 months. He needs a little more time to cook. And he looks at me like something out of a movie. He says, there is nothing to talk about. The placenta's ruptured, the baby is coming now. You will not be over in the operating room with us. You can be in the recovery. From the recovery room, I had line of sight when the doors open. And the next thing I know, there's a nurse practitioner, male nurse practitioner, holding up a 3-pound alien, looking at me, screaming bloody murder. He's born at 27 weeks. Screaming bloody murder. Looking bloody this. He's all 3 pounds when I got. He came really early, 27 weeks. She says to me, he's too small, you can't touch him now, Daddy, we'll get you in the NICU. I go to the NICU, I get to see him, they go, listen, wife has been through a trauma. We got this, 27 weeks, we get good results from these guys. Go back in there. Turned out my wife had appendicitis. Fortunately, the OB-GYN, the new OB-GYN, was smart enough to go around, check around, and figure out what was going on. He finds the appendix, the size, it should be the size of a pinky. It ends up being the size of a hot dog. He calls in a general surgeon. The general surgeon comes out, meets me, tells the story. He's supposed to give you the story. It's like, it didn't rupture anything. It didn't rupture inside the body. What happened? Well, it was fire. So it's just, yeah, next to whole bunch of things to go. And yes, learn about incubator. And another part for incubator is isolate. I spent 3 months next to an isolate, did the edits on my book next to an isolate. What's interesting about the isolate is it's basically creating its own environment for the child. It is regulating oxygen levels, regulating the temperature, everything. It is like the womb for short term. You spent 2.5 months in the NICU next to the isolate. Isolate means cut off from everything else. It's its own environment. Isolate. Now you're going to remember the term isolate. Isolate means, see all those ones off to the side? Have no connections to everything else? It's like maybe the NICU. Isolated. Isolated from the rest of the network. Okay? The rest of your life, there's the station number analysis term. Okay, that agrees to go to network. The Dakota network, notice the number of isolates has been reduced. People are coming into the network. We're seeing increase or reduction in the number of separate components. Temperature still about the same. Average degree is going up. Density is that's a decimal, right? Yeah, that should be. Yeah, inches is what I was looking at. 126 versus 71 here. We're seeing more interconnectivity. Now, we're going into the performance phase. We've got 40 nodes, 127 edges. How different is that from there? Not much. 0.163, 0.162, 6.35. Network diameter staying roughly the same. Number of components roughly the same. Clustering 8.13 to 8.25. Okay, so from time 1 to time 2, was there a lot of change? Yes, very good. From time 1, before the war starts, to when the war starts, when the war begins, there's a huge amount of change. This network is coming together. But by time 2 to time 3, is there a lot of change? No. The network is essentially up running and it's going to be as dense as it's going to be. So it's found it's kind of like optimal efficiency level, which it was going to run, and it kept running at that kind of optimal efficiency level. Okay,